at 2 years.
It's
It's okay.
I paused it.
But most of this 2-year process actually involves what I'm starting today, which is conversations amongst different members of the community. The Planning Commission has decided to spend this summer and probably even going into a little bit of the fall, branching out and just having informal conversations with various stakeholders in the community. Various members of my commission have been assigned different turfs, if you will, whether it be the business community, whether it be the schools, arts and cultural institutions, and I assigned myself town boards, commissions, and committees. So that's why I'm taking a little time here today, because I'm appearing before boards and commissions and committees. This needs to be a little more on the record than my other fellow commissioners who are going to be doing their outreach in a very informal fashion. It's going to be phone calls or having a cup of coffee with someone or whatever. And the idea is simply to learn a little bit about what's on everyone's minds. It doesn't have to be necessarily about economic development. It can be, your thoughts about, how things are going in town, what's going on you'd like to see more of, what's going on you'd like to see less of. Do you have a pet project or a pet peeve? Do you have questions about the process or questions about the existing plan? It can really be that open-ended. We're doing this because the process at this point, I'm considering to conduct, just gathering information. And, later on we'll distill it down, but we just want to get people's thoughts and collect them and basically put them on a digital bulletin board without judging them, without organizing them, just to kind of see what you're thinking, what you hear other people thinking. That's basically it. So what I'd really like to do is just, is there something that's on your mind about the plan, about our work in this committee, about things going on in other commissions or boards? So I'll leave it there. I'm sure
Your question?
Sure.
Mike Jackson, have you got a historical record for the last 3 years of the economic picture of the town?
I have some hard data. I can give you data on things, for example, like I can give you Department of Labor data. I can tell you how many jobs there are in Washington and how that's changed I can actually tell you how that's changed over the past 20 years.
Yeah.
I can tell you what's happened to the average wages in town by sector. I can tell you I can give you more sketchy information on the growth of different sectors in our local economy as to, in other words, is the educational sector growing? Is the retail sector growing? Is I can give you information on that. If you have a specific question, I can give you a ballpark answer.
No, what I was trying to get at is giving the people that you're going to talk to enough information so that they'll consider different alternatives in their areas, because they'll have the history. And if we can give them information, much more likely to get more without giving it to them.
Yeah, okay, I'm only getting about every third word, Mike, because that's because I think your microphone's cutting in and out.
But you can see what I'm getting at.
I get your point. The Planning Commission will be looking at lots of local economic data. Economic data are one of the few categories that we actually can get hard numbers, and although those hard numbers can be skewed at any specific point because we're such a small town a couple outliers can throw things off, which is always why I like to look at it from a long time frame, because then the outliers get mitigated, if
Yep.
that makes sense. And then it's a little easier to see trends. When somebody asks me what's happening over the past 6 months, I can't really give them anything but anecdotal observations. But if somebody asks me what's happening over the past 10 years, oh, I can show you a lot. So,
I mean, is this coming from the ACS information? No. So this
no,
is,
economic information comes largely from the Department of Labor.
okay.
The Department of Labor provides hard data. They literally require employers to report how many people are on the payroll. They do it monthly. And so we get, the number of payroll jobs in Washington is counted literally once a month. So, and then they're averaged over quarter and then year and whatnot. And with that data, you can draw a trend line. And they're also reported by sector. In other words, we know how many retail jobs there are in Washington every month. We know how many jobs there are in the accommodation and food service industry. We know how many jobs there are in, education. I mean, so we can get a fairly granular look at that. And that's, that's an important number. We can also get average, annual income information by sector as well.
So you've got a lot of information you can get.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the data and crafting the updated plan in terms of housing and demography, and economic development, we will have no shortage of data points. And we won't have to do, we won't have to do a lot of extrapolation, which is good. Anyone else have a question on?
What level of geographic detail is available for the data you're referring to? For example, do you have it by zip code?
I can get some data by zip code,
Okay.
but that's not hard data. That tends to come from the Census Bureau, and that's ACS data.
Yes.
And for a town as small as Washington, that is highly irregular and unreliable.
Okay.
It's not hard data. It's survey data, and
Okay.
and survey data is not technically done by zip code for the
Right.
census. It's done by census block or census tract,
Yeah.
I should say. And there's only 4 census tracts in the whole town of Washington,
Yeah.
so you don't get a really good sample. I mean,
Okay.
I think I told Michelle once that my favorite ACS stat of all time for the town of Washington was number of single Hispanic mothers, 11 plus or minus 17. So, I mean, that is the very definition of a junk stat.
It is.
So,
Well, I remember when I was trying to figure out how ACS worked,
mhm.
I went onto their website and they send out a specific number of surveys. I forget what the numbers are now, but what it boiled down to is that they send 4 to Washington.
1 for each block or tract, yeah.
Yeah, because it's 1 per 1,000 or something.
Well, it's
Yeah,
1 for census tract, and we only
Right.
have 4 census tracts.
So depends on those 4 households they
randomly
interview.
select,
right.
So our numbers can really pop up for income or race. They could just happen to hit 2 minorities in the 4 house. It's not very reliable data.
Which is why, as a rule, when we're working on when we do our work, for the plan, ACS data is the last resort source. It's like
Right.
we really don't like to use it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we have other data sources that are much more robust, so
Right.
we rarely have to rely on it. Any other questions about? So does that answer your question? So mainly in terms of labor data, we only get it by town.
Yeah, okay.
So-
That's really where I was going.
Yeah, I can't get it by.
Labor and industry or business.
Yeah,
class.
I can't get it by village center if that's what you're hoping. I don't have that access now. So, any other thoughts or questions? It doesn't have to be about jobs. It could be about anything that's on your mind.
I have some, but I
You
want
do?
everyone else to go first.
Oh, okay, that's that's fine. So, but if you've got a pet peeve, I need to hear it too. So,
I don't have a peeve, because you asked, things that we want to make sure. I have a list of things I've been kind of writing down that I feel like we should make sure are in the next one, most of which we've touched on, a little bit more on arts and culture, agritourism and farms, looking at that, and their preserves. So just that sector as a.
I can tell you that early feedback from people so far has shown us that we're going to need to address this issue of farming activities, and specifically the activities that we see farmers wanting to engage in that may stretch the definition of what farming activity is. And we all are kind of familiar with this. And we're going to approach it with an open mind, because I think there are some uses being proposed by farming interests that I think are appropriate. I mean, these are changing times, and I think we need to allow farmers to change with them. I think there are examples out there of folks engaging in some activities that probably cross a line. I mean, I'm thinking, specifically, I'm thinking of Ben Pilecki and Morris, who's basically using his farm as an events venue and, a concert venue. I mean, it's hard to make a case that that's even remotely related to farming, but full disclosure, Ben's a friend of mine, and so but still.
Watertown is looking at that too. The whole concert thing.
Sure, and this is, we're going to need more input. I mean, some of the farming community has weighed in on this, and they want flexibility, and I think they should have it personally. But the town is going to have to think about that where do we set the guardrails?
Absolutely.
So I mean, and that's going to be something we're going to be discussing as we craft the next plan.
Yeah.
So.
It was in the last plan right here. It's got under goals and strategies, incorporate farm-friendly and right-to-farm components in the zoning regulations, and consider other issues such as housing for seasonal workers, adaptive reuse of farm structures, and sale of farm products. So it was in the last one, and I think it should be in the next one.
It is. Well, some of those things certainly will be. I mean, right to farm probably won't, because we effectively are a right to farm community. I mean, farming is a permitted use basically throughout the entire town already. So, I mean, somebody came to me and said, well, we should have a right to farm ordinance. And I was like, it's kind of like suspenders on a belt. I mean, you can already farm basically anywhere in town. It's, passing an ordinance would basically say, I don't know, we really, really mean it. I mean, it's.
I think it's all those, it's the whole conversation that came up with zoning and events and incidental and customary. Well, what's customary to a farm? Well, that's changing, and they weren't an exempted category like churches and schools. So anyway, I think they felt that a right to farm, well, some people feel, I don't know what the language would look like, but it would protect some of those, is maybe what they're thinking, but I don't know that it would. I have to do some research on that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, we'll see. But anyway, that was just one of the things. Another thing that struck me as I was going through, because I feel like a lot of what was in the plan of conservation and development under economic development really was addressed. It was done. I mean, we look at the committee and the work of the committee and the website, which is fantastic, and the promotion of the town and everything. So a lot of checks off. But and a few things that are coming up now, like the business districts and the dually zoned
Split lots.
The split lots.
Mm-hmm.
It's being talked about. That was in here, so that's something. One thing that I was kind of struck by, and I wanted to hear the committee's thoughts on this. because I've thought about it, it says it to identify potential sites for new businesses and actively recruit businesses for these sites. And somewhere else in there, in the plan too, it had something about gathering data for new businesses. And that's just not something we have really been talking. We've been really trying to bolster the ones we have. You know, it wasn't that long ago, we had empty ones.
Well, I think that,
So,
that comment in the plan, the existing plan, was a reaction to the conditions that existed at the time.
right.
Where we were staring at empty storefronts and we were staring at businesses that were on the edge. And it could be argued that the efforts of this committee, you know, at least had somewhat of an impact in turning that around. I would like to think that it did. And so when you look at the economic development chapter in the existing plan, it's probably one of the more successful chapters. Yes. That and sustainability, which, by the way, were the two new chapters. There were no chapters on those subjects in previous plans. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, sustainability got a later start, admittedly, because, well, not many of us really knew what it was or what we were doing in all candor. Yeah. But, you know, the sustainability committee seems to be really hitting its stride right now. And, you know, I'm just I want to be one of those people like handing the juice out to the marathon runners while they're going by. I don't want to get in their way other than to help them. So, you know, those are two aspects, I think, where just, you know, the present plan, you know, did pretty well. And, you know, I will also be meeting with the sustainability committee and get their thoughts. You know, we're looking at it now. The planning commission is looking at what we call an update. So we're not going to do a rewrite, which was the last plan. We're not starting with a blank sheet of paper. We're starting with the existing plan. And we're going to take a look at what we accomplished, what we didn't accomplish, what we want to strengthen, what we want to toss overboard. I mean, no plan bats 1,000. There are some things that we put in there probably aren't relevant now. There are some things that are really relevant in town that weren't at all in this plan. So we're going to have to those things too. So that's kind of what this is about. I'm just trying to get a sense for what people are happy about, what they're not happy about, where we should maybe focus more or focus less.
I have a question, Wayne, and this might be out of scope for this, I'm not sure, but just because there's a food drive coming up on Saturday, if there's anything about how we take care of people, especially in light of what did or didn't happen with COVID, and especially like the folks in education. So I'm not sure how to ask the question, but I know there's been some talk about the Warren Food Bank not maybe being up to the task, or it is, or it's too far away. I don't know. I can't remember the concerns, but I know folks have mentioned it. So I don't know if that's part of this or not, but I just want to throw it out there.
It absolutely is. It's all part of it. The present plan didn't really address social service issues very much, if at all. I think the pandemic has really made people think about things differently than we did. I know from some of the feedback that I and some of my other planners have received so far in the community that there is some concern over, I guess, what I would call insecurity is maybe the word I would use. Insecurity, or whether it's food insecurity or housing insecurity. There's insecurity over existing infrastructure, not necessarily our town roads or whatever, but actually larger infrastructure. People are concerned about internet infrastructure. They're concerned about the electrical grid. I've had a number of people come to me and essentially say that they have no confidence in Eversource at all to provide reliable service. And they're asking me what, are we going to talk about that in the plan? And based on the number of people who have come to me, I think we're going to have to talk about it, which is something we've never had to do in a plan before. We have never had to really address public safety and security other than, hey, the town volunteers do a great job and let's make sure they have the equipment they need. And that's basically been the sum total response in all of our previous plans. And from what I'm hearing in the community, it's going to have to be more than that this time. So any feedback you get from, especially from, the church communities, because, you all know what's going on the ground. And, obviously you're not going to share any personal information. We would never want that. But if there are trends out there, you're going to see them before we do. So in any way you can let us know, that would be great.
You bet. And then a follow-up to your comment about Eversource, is there going to be anything about green energy in this? Is that even relevant? I mean, it's relevant, but I don't know what we can do for green energy because it's cloudy a lot, but yeah.
Well, it's there are municipal, efforts in terms of green energy that are being considered. The state, the state has changed. The state actually finally addressed the issue of net metering in the state in terms of people who get solar panels and how they're compensated for that power that they feed back to the grid. They actually, Pura actually came up with a pretty decent solution to it. I won't get into the details now. Anybody who's interested, email me and I can send you stuff that'll probably make your eyes glaze over. But there are thoughts. I mean, there are, again, speaking to issues of security, people are asking me, what happens the next time the grid goes down for 10 days? People don't think anymore. It's a question of, well, what do we do if this happens? They're now like, what do we do when this happens? People are fully expecting it to happen again. And they are expecting Eversource to drop the ball again. And, the town is going to have to, think about what we do in terms of emergency services, in terms of what we do, whether that means maybe thinking about, a microgrid for a couple of the village centers so that people have, basically an island of power where they can go and get money and get gas and get food and charge their phones and whatever, because not everybody is equipped with a generator. And so these are things that are coming up that, that honestly we didn't address in the last plan, and nor did we address in any previous plan.
Wayne, could I just add to that a little bit if I could? Your points are spot on. What we've been doing since the pandemic, and especially since the storm in August, where, to your point, Eversource dropped the ball, is we've restructured our entire emergency plan going forward, predicated on the fact that it will happen again, and Eversource, or whoever the power company is at the time, will not meet the needs of the municipalities. There was a complete unification of almost every municipality in the state with the impact and Eversource's recovery efforts. So with that said, currently we're working on a brand new shelter through the Salem Church, to your point, charging station, food, shower facilities, things of that nature, especially giving thought to the fact that we never had a shelter that was suitable for a pandemic type of an emergency. So like you said, it's kind of rewritten the book, a combination of things, the pandemic, the increase in severe weather, things of that nature. So between emergency services, town government, church organizations, the community at large, we've been kind of revamping the whole thing.
Yeah, and done a pretty good job, I would just say personally. But in terms of the plan, we're going to have to make that effort explicit and written and let people know that, for us to provide that level of emergency service and commitment to the townspeople is eventually going to require an investment, and we're going to have to, and we have to plan for it. So, I mean, we're fortunate now because of ARPA funds and whatever, we may be able to mitigate some of the costs, and we have been, I know, but that federal money is not going to last forever. And at some point, we're going to have to, assume the burden as a community to take care of our own. That's going to have to be spelled out in the plan.
Yeah.
Do the plans for, how do the plans for the community center, the new community center, take this into account?
Well, for the emergency component, the plan had a generator and was set to be a shelter as well.
Okay.
Not a, what we learned in the planning from the engineers, there are different levels of shelter. And this was mostly weather shelter, not COVID, that requires certain number of showers per person and square feet per person. But a cooking place, a place with a shower ability.
Yeah, it'll definitely be deemed a critical facility in that sense, to Michelle's point. It'll be a shelter in the sense of emergency weather, that kind of thing, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Which is good.
to the larger point, yes, we are going to have to address emergency services, in the next plan to a greater degree than we have in the past.
Mhm.
Which, if you've looked at previous plans, on the chapter in terms of town properties and services, whatever, it's essentially, hey, these guys are doing a great job. Let's make sure they have all the stuff they need. And that's basically all we said, because, they were doing a great job and we made sure they had all they needed. But we're now in different terrain.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning, whether it's under emergency services or sustainability or whatever, that the severe weather that we're experiencing that's causing our power to go out or flooding our streets and roads is clearly in front of us. And so I just think it's worth mentioning, it's important that we move our community towards sustainable, greener energies and aren't contributing to what's happening.
These events are going to increase in frequency and severity.
Correct.
They just are. And we have to make sure that our plan addresses that.
Yeah. But I think, and even beyond, it would be nice to know that we're doing what we can not to contribute to make it worse.
Sure.
Right?
Mm-hmm. That's part of the whole sustainability.
Exactly. To the extent that we can.
Sure.
So like electric dump trucks, or, get rid of the gas-powered vehicles that the town uses.
Well, that would be neat. Who knows? Ford's now making an all-electric F-150. How much, how much longer until we have an electric dump truck?
Yeah, we can certainly start moving in that direction, or researching what it would take. Each single vehicle makes a difference.
Sure. Any other?
One thing that you might want to consider is the question of Washington versus the 5 villages. Okay, and here's what I mean by that. All right, when we did early work on economic development, the idea was Washington. We're talking about the town of. Okay. I would say that in the years that I was involved in that project, I came to realize that the villages very definitely are pronounced differentiators, okay, in town. And one of the more interesting aspects of it is that we got quite a bit of traffic data from the Department of Transportation showing traffic flow and traffic patterns, as it were, okay? And while I can't, in any event, one of the things that you may want to consider would be to do small group meetings in the 5 villages. Get them to give you a list of what they consider to be priorities over the next decade, okay? And then look at the degree to which they are shared. that you would be able to really consolidate them, okay? One of the things, for example, that is very, very clear, and it drove a lot of the communications work that was done, was that depending upon where you live, what you don't know, okay, is usually someplace else. And that's where you want to be. You want to go to, okay, that event, okay? And if you have dinner with friends and they live on the lake, live on West Shore Road, you will often have the concept, gee, I didn't know gee, that's I wish I'd known, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
And the consequence of that can be, I think, quite pronounced. And I would say that in the work that we did with it, we didn't always attend to those differences, okay? So the 5 villages, small groups, let's do a real free think here on what are the critical issues and needs by village, then look at consolidation. The second thing and this is a bit of a struggle, is that understanding the commuter patterns, who works where, how many come in, how many of ours go out, that whole thing. You have some wonderful data on that, and you've done some of the work that reaches beyond the edges or the boundaries, saying within 35 miles, all of the owners of the businesses in Washington, okay, don't live here. That's a slight overstatement.
No,
Okay.
most don't.
Most
Okay,
don't.
okay, most don't, okay? But I've heard you use the 35-mile line,
Mhm.
okay, at one time or another or something like that, and I was always impressed with it. But all of them live within 35 miles, okay?
Mhm.
The commuter patterns, okay, are really very, very interesting when you look at them coming in and going out, okay? So that you will often find a situation in which the overwhelming majority of the people that live there don't even work in Washington, don't work anywhere near in Washington,
Mhm.
okay? So understanding some of those, I think, economic cornerstones or foundation stones, I think would also be very, 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 very important.
They are helpful. I don't have as accurate information on business owners as I do on folks who actually work in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, the labor stats that I get really are more granular when it comes to the jobs that reside within the
Yes.
town of Washington.
Yes.
Than in other words, I have better data on that
Yeah.
than I have on people who live in Washington and work somewhere else.
Right.
Now it kind of makes sense if you think about it.
I think though, Wayne, and I understand your concern, I think even the broad patterns
Mhm.
can be very, very helpful in understanding the makeup of the town and what we're trying to promote, and where we're trying to go.
Sure.
One of the things that you've already mentioned, which is pronounced quality, we refer to it as quality of life, okay, is the people who literally will drive significant distances to go to Steep Rock.
Mhm.
So if I'm downtown, someone will be saying, how do I get to Steep Rock? How do I get to Steep Rock?
It's that
You know?
signage issue.
And the interesting thing about that is that they somehow have been learned of, and it's been communicated to them that this is a drop dead place. No matter what you do, if you walk, you got to go to Steep Rock in Washington, okay? And those kind of patterns are really critical as we begin to do the economic development part of the economic, okay? How do we promote? How do we go? And that's where, if there's a single thing that has really challenged us, okay, it was the creation of Explore, okay? Explore Washington really was a major, major undertaking and content became an issue, audience became an issue, okay? And getting that all glued together based upon, if I'm talking out of town, what do I need to communicate? If I'm talking in town, what do I need to communicate? And it ranges all the way from jobs, okay, all the way through to Saturday night to Washington's town party or the Christmas party or the Harvest Fest, you know. So keep all of that in mind, and it has to do with what I refer to as patterns, okay? And the building blocks, I think, that you should, that we might want to start with would be the individual 5 villages.
That's a great suggestion. And, you know, I mean, right now we're doing this informally, you know, but,
Yes.
but as we progress, we're
Right.
absolutely going to have more formal, sit downs. In the past, we have had, like open forums here at the town hall, like on a Saturday morning, we would just, put it out there. We were going to have, and people could just walk up from their errands on Saturdays and just, and have a word with us. We'll probably do that again. We, in past plans, we have done exactly what you have said, where we actually had, I remember having a meeting just like you described at St. Andrews.
Yeah, I think I was at that
Marbledale.
Yeah.
We did it. I mean, so we went to the different villages.
Yes.
I'm not sure that was done to as great a degree in preparation of the last plan. I don't think it was.
That I can't.
But I know the one before it was.
Yes.
I would add to those villages, I might add, for lack of a better phrase, the lake. I mean, one of the questions that people have asked us in planning, it's like, well, some of these things you did in the plan worked out really well, whatever. Was there something that was a flop?
Yeah.
And the one example I give is the lake. We barely mentioned the lake at all in the existing plan.
Yeah.
And we've seen a dramatic change in development along the lake.
Yes.
And I don't know what else to say. We didn't see it coming. I mean, I don't know how, we missed it. And we're going to have to really look at that next time around. So, that's one example. So maybe we can include that in New Preston, but I don't know if the lake and New Preston are really the same thing. I think it's 2 different communities.
I think that there's actually 6 villages. Or a better way to say it is 5+. Okay, because the lake does not look at New Preston as part of it. Okay.
I'll take your word for it.
New Preston looks at the lake as a source of scratch, but that's pretty much the way that it's settling or has settled in over the last 4 or 5 years.
Sure, but again, the POCD is a plan of conservation and development, and we didn't really have a plan in place for the development that has been occurring on the lake.
Yes.
And that's one thing we're going to have to address.
Yeah.
Well, can I make one suggestion? The other thing that we have not talked about at all is the changes going on in demography of the 5 towns. They're aging. All of them are aging. And what's going to happen when, I don't know, but it isn't going to get better.
Well, we will, the demographics of the town, that, you're talking to the right guy here.
It's a real problem.
It is, and we are going to actually get our census data next month. We're going to have, and of course that data is going to have an asterisk because of COVID, because it is not going to reflect the influx of people who came here, because of COVID, because that census was taken technically right at the onset of it. So, but that's okay. It's still a hard number. It will, however, provide us with accurate housing data, and that's not affected by COVID.
Right.
We're going to have an accurate number of how many housing units there are in Washington and how many of them are second homes and how many, it was like, and that data is not going to be affected by the pandemic, and that will also be helpful. But your point to the, the aging of the community is spot on. I mean, Dan's favorite stat is 1 out of 3 people in Washington is on Medicare.
Yeah.
That's
And it's not going to get better.
yeah, and well, in the short term, it's not going to get better. I mean, you could make a case, and people have said this, and there's some truth to it, that the influx of people who came here because of the pandemic definitely skewed younger, and the enrollment data from the schools, speaks to that, both private and public, and plus just anecdotal information. I mean, that's not going to be reflected in the census figures, but I would caution folks on that, in that, we probably, we probably had a town, before COVID, we probably had a town with about 3,000 full-time residents and 1,000 part-time residents. After COVID, we had a town with 4,000 full-time residents and no part-time residents. What we don't know is how many of those 1,000 revert to their old behavior once things get back to normal. And that's a tough word, but are all of them going to stay? No. Are all of them going to leave? No. It's going to be somewhere in between those two extremes, but we don't know where that is yet.
Right.
And we're gonna be watching it closely, and we're going to be, there's going to be no hard data, unfortunately, that we can access for that. We're going to be talking to, we're going to be talking to everybody in the community. We're going to be talking to realtors. We're going to be talking to the schools. We're going to see if, if there's a drop off, and do we see, what kind of patterns we see, and, that sort of thing's going to be done on the fly. And you have a hand up, Michelle.
Oh,
Somebody has
Joan.
Yeah.
Joan, you have a question? Wonder if she did that by accident. Joan, if you have a question,
I have
Let's-
no questions.
go ahead.
No, I don't have a question. I'm all set.
Oh, okay.
Your hand's up. It may have been by accident.
Okay. But yeah, Mike, to your point, you're spot on. I personally can't wait to see the census data. It's like,
Me too.
it's going to be really, it's going to be interesting.
We should take it to a
Combined
bar.
with other sources, that's going to be, I mean, in reality, the town has gotten younger just because of the influx of people from the pandemic, but I'm not prepared to say that influx is going to be permanent. I don't know to what extent that's going to be.
Well, it's something we just have to watch.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I'll be tracking it as best I can.
we'll be keeping an eye on that too, like Wayne said, with school enrollment. We'll know come fall, and then we'll have some better, and then again in December, as things progress.
It's a moving target. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. What if the pandemic rears its ugly head again? I mean, right now, at least in our community, things are pretty good, and we're doing our best to keep it good. But, I'm not even going to venture a guess what things look like 6 months from now. So, I mean, we're going to have to, we're going to have to just be, kind of, thinking on our feet.
Mhm. I just wanted to throw one more thing in there. We've touched on it a couple of times, but
Okay.
Housing has come up in my conversations with farmers and with the arts community and pretty much everywhere. Interestingly, when we were with the development of the affordable housing plan, we did a survey to workers that do not live in Washington through the employers. I believe we got 96 responses. I'll have to check on that, of people who work in Washington but don't live here,
Mhm.
which in and of itself was interesting. But employers, schools, Megan came and spoke during the forum and said, you know, my teachers can't find a place to live here. It's hard to hire because they have to live far, and that's a quality of life issue. So I think just recognizing that housing plays a part in economic development. And if we, you know, having workforce housing is a good thing.
It is a complicated issue, as you are, I mean,
Yes, very
and
complicated.
the Affordable Housing Committee is doing really good work. And if the plan turns out the way I think it's going to turn out, it'll probably be adopted in whole by the Planning Commission for the POCD. That said, there are other issues besides, well, we have other issues of housing besides affordable housing in this town. I mean, as
There's a
we've
lack
learned.
of diversity.
There's-
Middle housing is missing as well.
And when you start talking about housing in the larger picture, when you start talking about senior housing, you know, downsizing opportunity, whatever, it all boils down to land use. And we have had successive plans in this town that have basically said that we need to steer new housing opportunities, and they need to be more small A affordable, and they need to be, we would like to see them in and around our villages, and we'd like to avoid having them in the farmland and the forest land, but our regulations basically only allow large houses on the farmland and forest land. And that's what's being built, and that's where it's being built. And, you know, I'll just say it. In terms of senior housing, the Housing Commission 15 years ago did a senior housing survey. We surveyed hundreds of seniors in the town on paper surveys and tallied it the old fashioned way by hand and everything. I mean, some people, Don Brigham, Sue Workoven, and Gene Sotheby did wonderful work, hours of work. We issued a 19-page report and it only had one recommendation. And that was that the town needed to allow market rate senior housing somewhere in the town. And that it should, and preferably in or near a village center. But just, we need to allow it. 15 years later, we still don't allow it. And, you know, that's implementation. I mean, we've had successive plans, and, you know, one of the things I hear a lot is, you know, you guys do a great job of crafting this plan and getting it approved, whatever. It's like, but how come you can't get people to do this stuff once it's right in front of them? And, you know, the insufficient answer I have to give is that I'm not given any authority to implement the plan. You know, the Planning Commission's charged with crafting it and getting it approved and getting it disseminated. I can't make any board or commission do anything. I can coax and cajole and try and convince and whatever, but at the end of the day, I can't drop the hammer on anyone. And that has to come, you know, from the folks who are charged with those responsibilities. And, you know, and I will keep cajoling and convincing and coaxing and whatever, because that's my job. But, you know, I can't find anybody. I can't fire anybody. I just, you know, I can just tell them what the plan says and tell them again and again.
Well, this is one area when it comes to writing economic development, and it was in there, housing was in economic development, but just, I think, you know, mention that, I forget what it is, but a diverse housing stock is also important for economic development, and so that we can support the regulation that allows, you know, the more tie-ins there are, you know, if we could to try to get us all sort of rowing in the same direction.
It's land use. It's, you know, we've been engaged in large lot zoning for decades, and the chickens are coming home to roost. You know, it's like no one's gonna spend hundreds of thousands of dollars for a large piece of land in Washington and put a modest caper ranch on it. That's just not going to happen. It doesn't happen. And, the only way you're gonna see modest capes and ranches is if you allow people to build a house on a smaller piece of land. It's not really that complicated,
Not rocket
but
science, no.
but it's incredibly difficult to get steady habits to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So what do you need from us? Do we just need to raise our hand and say we're in the game with you, or?
all I need you folks to, if you come up with other things, other ideas that hit you,
Okay,
email me, call me up,
okay,
whatever, or if you see one of my other planners, pull them off to the side and say, hey, I want to talk to you about something.
okay.
And it's, it's okay, we're expecting it. And don't be surprised if you show up at other meetings or other events and some planner starts talking to you about this, because if we in the planning commission are doing this successfully, you're going to get annoyed with us after a few months. And that'll tell us that we've reached out to enough people. It's a plan. For a plan to be successful, yes, you have to have it written well and you have to have it all thought out. But at the end of the day, it's really about buy-in. And if the community doesn't buy in, I don't care how well it's written. It's consulted or thought out. It's like, and the first step in achieving buy-in is talking to people, just finding out what's on their mind, what they consider important. So we're going to be doing this for a while.
Good.
Great,
That's it.
thank you. Thanks, Wayne. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
Excellent. All right, I've got lots of notes I'll share
Thank you.
with you. All right, I just had a couple of old business things on the agenda just to quickly touch on and wrap up. The map, I got all the feedback and it is updated. It is on the Explore website. And just so you know, I'm really happy because we were able to get the roads on there so that we got our 3 major destination farm. We got Waldingfield, Starberry, and Averill Farm, so you can actually get there. And we got all 3 preserves, river roads there, so you can get to Steep Rock. And the Indian Institute got Curtis Road on there. So some of the major draws that are out in the boonies that people can't seem to find because they lose their cell service as they get over the hill, they're there. Okay, so we'll talk about that. So I can pull it up on my screen, but it's getting late. I don't want to do that. It's on Explore right now. The passport, I have some here. I just wanted to follow up. I had mentioned last time about seeing if some of the ARPA money might be eligible for a reprint. After attending a webinar about it, I think it might be a stretch, not impossible, but not exactly the intended purpose. What I did want to ask the committee though, is I tracked it down, we've got 2,000 left. I didn't realize that. They're in the attic over at the supply. So I grabbed some more because I've been distributing them, bringing them to businesses, bringing them up to the library. I ordered a little display box to put on the outside of town hall to hold the passport. So anybody stopping up on the weekend, which believe it or not, people do. They like to just come and take their picture and they poke around here at town hall on the weekends. So I have them. They're not super out of date. There's only a couple businesses on there that have either changed hands or whatever. So what I'm wondering is, are there places that I should bring them that are not in town? Points of entry to the Northwest Hills, like visitors, like, I don't know, on 84, is there a visitor center as you come in from New York? Like, welcome to Connecticut? I don't even know, but.
There are, but they usually are looking for very large quantities. At different times, and you could check with, the Tourism Bureau, but I think they're looking for large quantities.
Mhm.
And I think one of the things to do, and certainly the WBA can do it, is just to, let members know that these are available, because
Okay.
I refill our display every weekend, and here. And what you're doing by putting them on the outside of the town hall. I mean, I think that's a great thing to do, because.
That's good to hear, that people are still taking them.
Oh, yeah, they still
yeah.
take them, yeah, no, they
Good.
do, and they're very grateful, because sometimes they don't see them, and we start talking about the town, and I say, you know, would you like one of these, and, you know, big smile.
Yes, somebody was having a wedding with close to 200 out-of-town people coming to town, so they asked me for 100 of them. I brought them so that all the out-of-town people had one. Thought that was a really interesting
And I don't know
use.
how many the Mayflower has. mean,
I need
don't
to check
know-
in with them.
I don't know.
Because they're another
stock.
definite point of entry for visitors.
Right.
The library said people often will wander in there looking, so I brought some up to them. Yeah, anywhere people
One
are,
other is, Hopkins,
Hopkins
okay.
and Springhill.
okay?
Mhm.
I think that if you were to spend some time with Hillary and Jorge,
Mhm.
you would be astounded at the counts.
Mhm.
Okay, and the regularity of those counts,
And
okay?
especially now that they're on edible nutmeg.
Oh, right, I know.
Yeah,
On the cover, that was
Did you see that?
fantastic.
Mhm.
yeah, I didn't, I don't, so anyway,
That was great.
and they're very much committed to us and to the
And the WBA.
the Washington Business Association.
Well, yeah, yeah, they're only technically in Warren, they're really a Washington business, they really are.
I agree.
Yeah.
We
So
count them
anyway,
as us.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I will check in with them and
I
get
would
over
strongly,
up there.
strongly urge you to do
All right.
that. The other thing is that with the arrival of, or with the, some of the major events that go on in town,
Mhm.
like SHAG,
Yeah,
okay, would be to bring them to the attention of the people putting together the SHAG program, okay? Because you're gonna have a lot of out-of-towners.
might not
Great
even consider,
idea.
you might even consider the pavilion with things going on and whatever, you know,
Yeah, a little
you know,
box
I mean, the
there.
Shakespeare thing, you know, whatever, yeah, it's a, you
I
know,
was about, right,
yeah, they come in and it's like, and
right.
I don't know if there's any sort of thing over at the pavilion where you can stick a, you know.
but I can order another box and they're outdoor. The one I ordered for town hall, it's just the acrylic,
Yeah, the
you know,
acrylic
but
lid
it's
behind,
covered,
yeah, it's
but it's
covered.
got a lid so that it's weatherproof.
Right,
But
yeah, I mean, but the pavilion, you know, there's lots of different events that
That's a
go on
great
and people
idea. I
come in
didn't
and
think of
they're,
that.
you know, and,
Mhm. All right.
I think 2,000 could disappear very quickly.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
these are some great ideas. So I'll just continue to distribute, especially for the summer. We've got some big stuff coming up. So I'll work on that.
What else you got on your list there?
So the arts mailer, which I've got there, I brought extras in case anyone wanted to see it. We talked about it last month.
I got it.
Yeah, it went in everyone's mailbox. We approved it, and I just thought I'd let you know. So it was $500 to mail it, $500 to design it, $600 to print it. So it's not a huge investment, and I printed 1,000 extra. So I've brought them to Judy Black Park, to the Art Association, to the market, to Hickory Stick, to the library, to Marty's, to 9 Main, you know, so I'm just leaving stacks. I've got a stack
Sure.
out here
Sure.
for people to pick up. As soon as I hit the mailboxes, I got a couple of emails thanking me because it was a couple of arts people. So
Okay.
I just thought I'd report back. It happened. There it is.
It's nice, it's attractive, and, you know, I don't know about anyone else, but it went in our fridge.
Excellent.
Just
That
put
was
it with a
the idea.
magnet, you know, what I mean? Oh,
Yeah.
that's great, put it up there, magnet, and it's like, we're thinking, when was with the whatever, blah, blah, oh, it's like, wait a minute, and
Great.
that's the idea.
That was the idea. And that was just one of those ways that, you know, I felt we could help the arts community as a whole. And then again, when people come for these arts events, they stop and shop and they do their other. So just wanted to circle back on that. I also just forgot to put, I usually do those sort of the new businesses coming. We've got a Depot Dog she's frantically working to get her shelves in and stuff and is hoping to open in early August. I've been in contact, I forget his name. We were trying to set up a meeting, but the dermatologist in New Preston is looking for an August opening as well.
Right.
Fleming Brown has bought Hidden Valley. She's a caterer who lives in Bridgewater. She's also looking to open in August, so I don't have a contact. I couldn't find her online, but.
As a
we're gonna-
restaurant or as a catering?
As a restaurant that's probably gonna have a catering component. When I was asking Tammy, she wasn't completely sure on the model, might be less breakfast, more dinner, but she's not sure. So we'll see, but something's happening there, so that's exciting. Yeah. I think that's it for the new businesses.
Well, and
Did
you
I forget
are,
one?
it's worth noting that the second floor of your building above you is now going to be vacant.
It is? Who's
Yeah,
moving out?
Steve Brock.
Oh, are they moving to the building they've been working on over in Macro Costa? Over there?
That's correct.
On
That's
Christian
correct.
Street,
They're gonna
okay.
they're gonna be moving, there's been a sharp increase in staff levels,
Mm,
and they're gonna be moving over to, some of the donors bought the house alongside of, you know, the rest of the story. I
Yeah.
don't need to take you through it, but anyway,
I remember I
And
was
they're
at a
doing the-
zoning meeting, because they were also gonna make,
they're doing
Do some
extensive
educational-
renovation.
yeah, okay.
In that building. Now, from time to time, I've chatted with them, and so far, I haven't heard anything about of who might replace them. Okay,
Well, and that is one, I think, thing that is sort of interesting. Office space we have. We've got the upstairs over by the post
Right,
office.
right,
I think most of above Marty's is full, but I think there might be one more, they're
Right.
sort of subletting
Right.
that up there.
right.
So office space, we have a little bit of. I have somebody who's waiting for a retail space to open. She keeps touching base with me, saying, hey, have you heard of
Yeah.
anything? So,
Yeah, office space is gonna be harder to fill as time goes on, as more people work remotely.
yeah.
Office space is not gonna be as in demand.
So it is interesting that office space is not as desirable, but first floor, window
Mhm.
front retail is.
Sure.
And I was about to mention, you know, Sweeney Associates.
Sweeney and Associates.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So, there's somebody in, Jim Kelly's old offices
Oh,
here at the
okay.
corner,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, at the corner.
I was wondering
of
who bought
Cook
it.
and River.
Okay.
And the sign says Sweeney Associates, and it says, we build outrageous and absolutely stunningly gorgeous new houses.
So
Doesn't say
they're
that.
architects.
I think they're architects
Or
and they're
builders.
contractors, and they
Okay.
are one of those that
Toll
build.
Brothers.
Right, huh?
All in
Toll
one,
Brothers.
all in one?
Well.
It's all in one, kind of
Right.
like this,
Yeah, the
design
thing that I
build,
would say
whatever.
is that something's going on, because as you know, Tittman moved over here.
Yeah, he's in the deep
Okay.
end.
Mhm.
So there's something bubbling, okay?
Might it be the lake?
Well, it's partially the lake. It's
Mhm.
partially the lake, okay?
Mhm.
Yeah, that is interesting, though.
Yeah,
I'm glad that space filled.
as you are aware, on a national level, there's a tremendous amount of migration underway.
Absolutely.
So what you're seeing is two examples of it here,
Mhm.
okay? But, you know,
Well, and I'm in contact with both Pels and Julie
yes,
King, realtor. You know, they're still crazy busy, just.
Yeah.
And houses are selling in a day.
right.
Whereas, you know, just 2 years ago, your house could sit on the market for a year. So it's still a crazy housing market here and everywhere. So
What else you got?
that's it, except for any kind of questions, comments from visitors, selectmen, WBA report. Lisa and I have been emailing and crossing paths. I know there's a social next week, which I'm missing because I'm going to be out of town. I'm very sad about that because it's been a year and I'm missing everyone. So I know the social's happening. Somebody from Gilmore Girls in Kent contacted her, so we were going to just talk about what that may or may not entail, and I wasn't familiar with the last one and the bus and stuff. So I'm gonna touch base with her. Anything else? WBA? Yeah. How about you, Jim? You still with us? Anything else you want to report to us?
I don't think so, Michelle. Thank you.
Okay. Any visitors have questions or comments that we haven't checked in on yet?
The one thing that I would just remind everybody is SHAG is here for 2 weeks, starting the end of next week. So,
Absolutely.
uh,
And their lineup is unbelievable.
right,
Broadway singers,
Mhm.
Connecticut
Right.
Ballet, Palablet, like off the charts.
Right.
We are so fortunate. So
Oh,
check
yeah.
it out. I'm
Right.
going every day. The weekend I'm here. I'm away the opening weekend, and I'm also sad I'm missing that. But
That weekend of the 8th, I would encourage everyone, because talking to the Ingracias, they're really pushing to get the entire community, or as much of a diverse mix of the community out there as possible. So the better we get the word out for that townwide party, I think the more successful it's going to be in terms of what they're looking to achieve.
And I know I was talking to Stephanie on Friday. They've got good response for the townwide party. You can go online to just let them know you're coming. It's free.
Yeah.
It's a little cumbersome to get through the website, but it's free. And they've had several hundred people respond. So which is great.
yeah,
And they've also had good response for the Saturday night before the Pride lineup, which is
Mhm.
supposed to be just unbelievable. So, but the other days they're really trying to push. There's a lot of opening for those as well.
Right.
So please look at it and consider participating.
Yep.
Anything else? It's a lot.
yep.
Committee, well done.
Thank you.
Thank you for
giving me
hanging
the
in
time.
there. Yeah, and thanks for coming. It's good. It's good stuff. There's a lot of buzz.
Mhm.
All right, so
Okay.
perfect. 4:32. Well done.
I move we adjourn.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
We're dropping out.
Thanks, Michelle.
Hey, so this worked, I think.
Eventually, yeah.
I mean,
once we got
God, it
going,
was
yeah.
cumbersome getting it up there, and I'll have to have them show me next time. It's like, aren't there directions with it?
Well,
But, so,
it's
but
kind of like,
Dan,
really.
but Dan, before you run away, so I was looking at my computer screen to see the other people, but you could see them up there, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hear them, except for Michael Jackson's mic has
Michael
always
Jackson
been.
is always.
I think Michael has a computer that's like 15 years old.
And it's just, that's what his mic does?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
so.